Thank you, Noe. We're going to introduce ourselves, give you a little bit more background on ourselves, and we are going to start with Ernie.
Great. Good morning, everybody. My name is Ernie Mashner with Victaulic. I'm the global lead for water. I've been in the water business for about 30 years with a couple of stints working on a few infrastructure projects called the London 2012 and Rio 2016 Olympics. My background is water, wastewater. I currently reside in the home of the Stanley Cup, Denver, Colorado. Sorry, Canadians. Spent the first part of my career on the deliver side of projects, delivering large projects around the world in 15 countries, including the United States. I've recently moved on to the supply side. So I've sat on both sides of the table when it comes to a lot of the issues that we're going to talk about this morning, and I'm excited to talk with my panelists about it.
Good morning. My name is Paul Vranisek. I'm the head of the Houston Waterworks team. Houston Waterworks team is a joint venture between Jacobs Engineering Group and CDM Smith. We're currently delivering the largest drinking water treatment plant project that we know of in the world. It's a progressive design build project in Northeast Houston. It's about $2 billion. We're about 75% done and somewhere around 55% of the time. I think I'm here to essentially show how early supplier integration works. It can be very successful if done correctly and so forth. So we'll show you a little bit about the project. We have 1,500 people working every day on site. I know a lot of them. They see me walking the site every day. I'm a water, wastewater guy, but I've done a bunch of other stuff too, power generation facilities, transportation infrastructure. I'm from Toronto. That is the real home of the Stanley Cup. and Denver won. That was just your Canadians beating our Canadians. It's all Canadians.
Hi, everybody. My name is Jeff Houts, and I'm a supply chain guy, of all things. One of four, only four, that are attendees and probably in this room. And that's a very small number, and we'll get to that when it's my turn to give some input. This is my 33rd or so year developing and implementing supply chain best practices in the EPC contractor space. So most of that was with Fluor. I have consulted and now find myself employed at Wood on projects in the renewable energy and power business line. Thankful to have worked across businesses in my career also, which included mining and power and even government services and pipeline work and a lot. Realizing the similarities across businesses much more than the differences. So we'll get into some detail here in a little bit about collaboration and supplier engagement.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Shannon DaCosta. I work at Fluor. I'm our Advanced Work Packaging Regional Manager for Canada. My background is structural engineering, and I've spent a good portion of my career so far in the field in construction, and I have a passion for building and building things right the first time. So that kind of dragged me into the advanced work packaging world. So here to talk to you about that from an early supplier engagement perspective.
Hey, good morning. I'm Keith Churchill with the Bechtel Corporation. I've been with Bechtel for 15 years. I'm currently the Chief Innovation Officer for the company. I work with all of our business units, our customers across all of our business lines to really understand what are our priorities to deliver new innovative technologies that are going to improve our performance, enhance our safety and quality, and improve schedule and cost across our jobs. I've worked out of our Welding and Applied Technology Center in the Houston area and recently moved to Reston to take this role. I'm very excited to be here. I'm here to talk about developing an innovative culture and how promoting early supplier engagement can be a significant contributor to that. So thank you for the opportunity.
So I'm Ashram, but please call me Ash. I've been with Hilti for six years as a global sustainability manager now, but always had the background in working with energy and industry customers. And especially at Hilti now, the reason I'm here, coming all the way from Liechtenstein against sustainability, right? Just to talk about, what is upcoming for energy and industry customers to focus on sustainability and make it reality. So looking forward to sharing and learning.
Great, thank you guys. My name is Michael DeBrail, and I've been a project manager for over 40 years in every industry except healthcare. So defense, finance, nuclear power, oil and gas, et cetera. So I have the privilege of leading this august panel and talking about early supplier engagement, early proactive supplier engagement. And just a little bit about me on the personal side. I have 4 children, they're all adults. And during the pandemic, I became a grandfather. So I'm pretty sure, twice. So I'm pretty sure there was some proactive engagement somewhere in the pandemic. So without any further ado, we'll move into the discussion. So early supplier engagement, early contractor involvement, lots of different phraseology and lots of different deep studies out there on the benefits of early supplier engagement. One study done here 24 years ago by CII, folks like you, found that early supplier engagement is really a stacking early in the project definition phase of the competencies that come from your OEMs, your constructors, and your engineers, and the owners. And the question they ask in that study is, why wouldn't you have early supplier engagement on your projects? And hopefully, we answer that question for you. Noy talked about collaborative contracting. That's the newest thing in terms of how we run and plan successful projects. And I happen to have spent the last 7 years heavily involved in helping define what that means for the industrial world. And as you can see there, I don't know if you can see the big dot, but there's a big dot there. And the number 2 method that we use in putting collaborative teams together is early supplier engagement. So 24 years ago, it was a good idea. Today, we think it's a good idea. And this morning, we're going to talk to you about it from a variety of perspectives, as you see here. So with that, I'm going to turn the floor over to Ernie from Victaulic, and he's going to ask you all to participate in our panel discussion.
Great, thanks, Mike.
Okay.
Got my own. I'm going to stand up and walk around because I'm not quite sure what this thing behind the stage is. I remember there was a movie called Stargate, and aliens might come out of that thing. So if everybody can get out your phones, go to www.menti.com. It'll ask you for a code. Code is 60.52, no dots, 605259.4. Hopefully Menti hasn't changed that on me. And if we can get our AV team to switch over to my computer. People are already in, this is awesome. Okay, so the first question, what is your role in the capital delivery project? No cheating, don't look at your neighbor's answer. Yours is gonna be different. Oh, the code. So the code is also at the top of the poll. It is hard to read in the back, I know, that's why we created this slide for it. 605259.4, I'll say that another couple of times. So I know we have more than 34 people in the room. We'll kind of give some time for this. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through a series of questions, easy questions, no studying is involved, and our panelists are going to react to those questions when they have their time on the floor. So we can see we have a lot of owners in the room. This is great. You know, a lot of these things are driven from the top down, and owners wanting better delivery for their projects. My supplier cohort is underrepresented here for some reason. We need to work on that with the CII membership team. This is great. We're at 111, 113. I'll give a plug to anybody. White envelopes only, please. This is great. So we're gonna see this breakdown. So keep an eye on what your color is. We're gonna see this breakdown as we move through some of the other slides. So next question. Oh. Back to the poll, folks. There we go. Okay, free-form answer. Enter anything that you want. Please try to keep it PG or better. There is no profanity filter in Menti. They won't get replaced with asterisks. Say anything you want, just single-word sentiments, gut reaction. When you hear supply chain, what do you do after you spill your coffee in the morning? Just free-form word answers. We'll get a little word cloud here. of things that are coming up. Challenging, yeah, we've been hearing a lot of that so far. Painful, ad hoc. This is great.
Not available.
You guys can all see this? Broken.
Broken.
You know, it's interesting. I think a lot of us in this industry, we've heard unprecedented a lot. And with another one of my industry associations, we've talked about, COVID was a black swan event, but it seems like we're getting a lot more black swan events. And so our industry needs to respond to the black swan event, not necessarily the COVID or the Eastern Europe issue. This is great. We'll just give another couple seconds here. All of the responses to these slides you'll be able to pull off of Menti at the end, and then we will also take this as a PDF and we'll add it to our presentation in the conference app. Challenging is what seems to come up. This is great. So now we're starting to get a feel for the app. If you're still not in, the code is 6D52594. It's at the top of the slides. This is great. Appreciate everybody's input so far. Another easy question, who should own this risk? You know, we've been, those of us in the industry for a while, the risk should be borne by the party best able to what? Manage it, exactly. So who is best able to manage something like COVID? This was kind of an easy one. All right, it's good to see a lot of those yellow owner dots in the shared. This is terrific. Because what will happen in our dynamic, if an owner tries to put a risk onto the EPC firm, the EPC firm will price that in, and if that risk doesn't actually come to bear, then the EPC firm may get some extra profit that could have gone to the owner to do other capital projects. So that's why sharing it is our best practice. This is great. Boy, those dots are really going to town there. Here's another one. What supply chain disruptions has your firm experienced? Owners, again, you can answer more than one. A lot of these came out of a discussion that I did with another industry group a few months ago. And so these are all things that people are experiencing. So we're starting to see some dots huddle around longer delivery times, high price increases, availability, cascading delays. Again, once you have one piece of your supply chain, if that winds up being a few weeks late, then it impacts your ability to do another, which is why a lot of the CII best practices come into bear with advanced work packaging, with modularization. All of these are communities of business advancement that help to work to mitigate some of these things. Another thing to keep in mind is this room are the highest level of practitioners in our space. So if the highest level of practitioners are seeing these types of disruptions, imagine the firms, imagine the owners that don't subscribe to these practices, imagine how much the impacts they're experiencing. All right, is the panel seeing these things? All these dots are huddling. This is great. 531 answers. So if you were in that bucket that was other, quick couple of words, what are the other types of things that you've experienced? And those will pop up here on the screen in separate boxes. And we'll just give a few seconds for these. No bids, right? If somebody can't ensure delivery, they may not even price something. Delays, change orders, escalation. Low experience. If you have one of your preferred firms that's not bidding things, that's having issues, and you wind up having to go to somebody else, maybe it's an upstart, maybe they're not that experienced, they've come over from another industry. All of these things we're finding are cascading. So here's one. Are supply chain disruptions actively affecting your decisions to pursue projects if you're an EPC firm, or actually put projects out for bid if you're an owner? Wow, we're split here. Two-thirds no, one-third yes. Again, that's a pretty significant number given the number of people in this room, that a third of people, it's actually affecting their decision to pursue work. I mean, there was once a time when, our industry goes in cycles, and you'll see periods of time where everybody is chasing work. Then everybody gets bid, and then it's difficult to pursue work, and it's difficult to get work. So I can't think of another time in our industry where this is, we've had an issue like this, the supply chain disruption issue, that actually affects the decision to bid work. So if you have actively engaged in mitigations, what types of mitigations have you used? So these are some of the best practices that have come out that we've heard from our customers and from the owners that we work with that have helped to get around. Again, this room is the best practitioners in our industry. Early procurement, yay. Changing materials and suppliers, that can have its own, back to cascading effects. If you have to change the material or change a supplier, that can affect your design, it can affect your delivery, it can affect your sequencing. Resequencing work, delaying project starts. Value engineering, contingency draw. We talked about that shared responsibility. If you have a contingency that's set aside to mitigate these issues, then you can pull from the contingency. It's in the best interest of the project. We're approaching 400 responses here, and there are only 3 that have said that there have been no changes. All right, so those of you that were in the something else, I think you know what is coming next. We'll give just another second or so here. Let the panel kind of mull these responses here. So if there's something else, any other best practice, and again, that previous slide has evolved from me giving this survey to from another industry group. Gain sharing, that's great. You put some incentives in place, and both sides can benefit.
Hope for the best. That's the best.
Hope and pray.
Praise on there twice.
Hope for the best.
There's no crying in construction. AWP, there we go. We got to vote for AWP. This is great. Again, at the end, you can download what you're seeing on the slides. You can download for your own use and share with your project teams after we leave here today. So, on the topic of this panel, how many people are actively using or involved in early proactive supplier engagement? So we've narrowed this down to what mitigations people are using. And again, have a look at what the split looks like from the owners, EPC firms, suppliers. A lot of yes answers. Good. That's actually the right answer. So this is terrific. Now, I will say the last time I did a survey like this with an industry group was right at the start of the Stanley Cup Finals, and one of my questions was who's going to win the Stanley Cup, of which there was only one correct answer. Turns out I was right. Go Avs. This is great. So again, this is the group of the best. We consider ourselves the best practitioners in large capital delivery, and we have a preponderance of people that are using early proactive supplier engagement. Freeform answer, how can the supply chain help? Again, this is feedback to us of how we can work with you in order to mitigate some of these issues. Freeform answer, improved delivery, communication, transparency. We all work in collaborative environments. I mean, that's where we want to do. That's where CII has proved that that's where we get the best project results in collaborating, getting the entire team together. Communication, transparency. Again, these aren't technical issues. These are people issues. This is us getting around the table and figuring out how to solve these problems together. Transparency, collaboration. Communication is the other yellow one. Sometimes those are hard to read. And I think you're going to see these themes as we work through our panel. You're going to see these themes come up again over and over. Great. Appreciate everybody participating here. What are your concerns going forward? Almost done. Just got 2 more questions here, and I'll turn it over to the panel to digest all this and make some sense of it. Data availability. New normal. What's the next thing? Is it going to be a weather event in the Southeast? Is there going to be some other geopolitical issues that may affect our ability to deliver our projects? Global supply chain. When will it end? Hold on, there's one more question. 3, 2. I don't know if there's an eject button for Michael. How long do you think this will last? Those that were in with Anirban yesterday heard his take on it. I'm interested in your take. And this is pretty consistent with what we hear in talking to our customers and our owners. Just take note of that. There is nobody in this room that thinks that we're within 6 months of being out of it. So there's time. There's time on your active projects. There's time on your projects that are in early procurement. There's time on your projects that are still in planning to be able to implement some of the AWP, implement some of the CII best practices. This is terrific. I'm going to turn it back over to the panel. Thanks for your participation. You can download these, and we'll make it available as part of our presentation file at the end.
Thank you, Ernie. That was amazing. When we came up with this idea, we weren't sure where it was going to go, and hopefully all of you have had a chance to digest some of this as we go through your questions. So now I'd like to introduce Paul, who's going to talk about Houston Waterworks and their implementation of early supplier engagement on the Northwest Water Purification Plant. Paul, it's all yours.
So I guess I'm here as evidence that if you do that, it can work very well. So we're going to show you a little video. I'll talk about it just first. We have around $120 million or so of process mechanical equipment. We bought it all out immediately. When you talk about early supplier interface, it's not just about equipment and products. We purchased all the wire day one. We purchased the wire, we put it in a warehouse. After the cost escalation that we've all experienced over the past couple of years, I could sell that wire for a massive profit for twice what I paid for it easily. Plus I have it. And there's some risk mitigation just in having the actual material on hand when we go to install it. So you're looking at a video of the Northeast Water Purification Plant. You see this black pipe on the in the bottom right-hand side that wraps around the site. I point that out because literally on Monday, we're going to energize the pumps in the building that has the blue roof and circulate water through the plant for the first time. Lake Houston, you can see in the background, has a pumping station. We constructed that in the middle of the lake. Lake Houston was constructed for the purpose of being a water security vehicle for the citizenry of Houston. And this plant was conceived a generation ago as being necessary to transition the area from groundwater source of supply as the source water to surface water. So this state-of-the-art mega project, $2 billion, is literally going to have water flowing through it on Monday through that black pipe that you can see. It's going to be a monumentous day. Early supplier interface. So, my panel member happens to be from Victaulic, and I think we have the largest Victaulic purchase order in the infrastructure group, right?
In the United States.
So we have the largest purchase order with Victaulic. We have the largest vertical turbine pump order in the world. We have 34 major vendors. We got them all under contract, not just as soon as we were put under contract. We actually got all of the arrangements dealt with long before that. So when we were endorsed to proceed at council by the city of Houston, all of the purchase orders and contracts were ready to go. That's the way you do it. Having the stuff in your possession, having the stuff in your hands, being able to do detailed design when you know what type of centrifuge you're going to have and you know what type of pump you're going to have is just risk mitigation and just benefit for the overall project. So you're coming up on the video now and you can kind of see the water's going to go in through the thing on the bottom right-hand side right now and go right through that train. So water will be flowing through that literally on Monday. Other stuff about the job. It's about $2 billion. I have 1,400 some odd people on site every day. I'm on site every day. They see me walk the site every day. They know we care. We know that getting them home every day is the most important thing that there is. So they take care of us. They take care of our stuff. They install it correctly. The pride that they have is incredible. We just passed 7 million man-hours with 0 lost time accidents, which has never been done in South Texas before. I'm not sure it's been done too many places anywhere in the world. So we're going to get to the end with 0, and that's going to be in a couple of years from now. So we're about 75% done in somewhere 55, 60% of time. So we're doing quite well despite this little thing called COVID. So we bought everything early, procured it early, but we engaged with these people long before that. So we had budgetary pricing cycles, we had technical analysis of the various different devices. So We have the largest centrifuges in the world being used for the purpose that we're using them for, which is dewatering, not biosolids, but basically just sediment from Lake Houston. We have 4 of them. The parts that go into that centrifuge came from 25 different countries. So every country responded differently to COVID. Every country responds differently to things like cost escalation, talent shortage, material shortages, and so forth. So anyway, we were engaging with these people years before it was time to actually go. All of the equipment that we've purchased on the project, we purchased everything on behalf of the city of Houston to avoid just dumping it into a tier 1 subcontract. Saves a lot of money, saves a lot of time, mitigates a lot of risk. But we have never waited for anything. So I don't know who can say that in this COVID world, that they're developing a mega project and not waiting for anything. All of the cable is there. You know, we did supplier outreach for ready-mix concrete supply, cement, fly ash, contemplated slag. People in South Texas don't even know what slag really is. But fly ash availability was a big deal, and we had to mitigate that. These days, we deal with things like stainless steel. Stainless steel cost escalation is extraordinary. It got really bad when the issues between Russia and Ukraine got nasty. And we've seen just extraordinary cost escalation in the price of stainless steel just this year. That's not going to get better. That's going to get worse. So we have a philosophy, there's nothing better for us than to have the equipment, have the materials in our possession, and nothing cheaper than being done. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed the little video. We post them on LinkedIn here and there, and I send them around every couple of weeks. And it's testament and evidence that if you do tackle some of these issues correctly, promptly, and appropriately, you can have great success, which we're having right now in the city of Houston. Thanks.
Super, thank you. So this is a really good example of early supplier engagement and how Houston Waterworks and Paul and his team implemented it. So now we're going to go to Jeff. And Jeff, can you describe what early supplier engagement and collaboration success looks like from an EPC contractor's perspective? And then maybe talk about some of the issues and challenges of actually doing that?
Yeah, thank you. So I'm going to keep it simple. I got 2 pictures and a statement to make. But before I do, I mean, praying is great, everybody. It's really wonderful. You should do more of it. But come on. Praying is not the answer to solving supply chain struggles. It might help, though. First, the statement, and then I'll get to these 2 crazy pictures that I came up with. We need to take advantage of the value that suppliers want to offer us. We rarely do, but it's out there as low-hanging fruit for you to take advantage of each and every day. I'll get back to that sort of in the wrap-up little conclusion in just a minute, but it's really important to know that it's there for your taking, and suppliers and contractors want to do that for you. For my whole career, I've been approached with all of these ideas where they're trying to do more than just sell me something. Okay, so picture if you're some supply chain or project person lying on a blanket in the middle of a beautiful forest, looking up and smelling the nice breezes and birds are chirping, right? The saying that some of you hopefully are saying in your heads is, I can't see the forest for the trees. And that's what this picture is meant to represent. It's easy to focus on the end game, but really hard to get there, right? The trees are the obstacles to seeing the beauty that is that forest. Some of those trees that we experience on projects, those hindrances, those obstacles, I guess I'll start with one example. The decision makers who own the budget and the approval to implement strategies sometimes are the most removed from understanding the value of supplier collaboration. It's a drag, but it's true. So we as supply chain, or certainly the suppliers and the subcontractors, aren't involved when decisions about staffing and strategy and budgets and all of that happen. That's a big tree, if you will, or obstacle to letting this happen. So getting more upstream educating the decision makers during the proposal process is really important, and suppliers and contractors wish to help with that too. Certainly budgets, and so the obstacles hinder us from seeing the big picture. So the focus on the end game is why we're here to talk about this. The second is stepping over dollars to try to pick up pennies. And weird for a supply chain guy to talk this way, but it's not about money. Every time a project thinks that the solution to their woes is saving money in initial capital outlay is making a mistake. I've been involved in many root cause analyses and project problems that were caused by our only strategy being spend less money. My point in bringing that subject up here about supplier collaboration is the best place to get help in quantifying the right decision, maybe spending a little more money, having some creative strategy you're too shy to even bring up, is the suppliers are going to help you quantify that. It's another value they want to add, saying, if only you would say yes to this thing I've been trying to tell you is going to help you, instead of this traditional purchasing effort that you tend to do over and over and over, where you take advantage of no value, none. And so we tend to step over the dollars in order to say, well, great, let's pat ourselves on the back at these pennies that we've saved that everybody understands. We just spent less on our PO spend, right? So back to the beginning, suppliers are most willing to help projects get that right. Quantify reasons to maybe spend a little more money, maybe chop down a couple of those obstacles so you can see the beauty that is supplier collaboration. Take advantage of what they're offering for you. So one last tidbit. Supplier collaboration, something it's not, is just having a high-level relationship between, say, an owner or a contractor and a supplier. That's just, I'm collaborating, I know Bill or I know Sally, so I can pick up the phone and make something happen when something slips. It's not supplier collaboration. Supplier collaboration is much earlier than that, and it should never come to that because you're partnering with that company for smooth business, right? So that's an EPC perspective about some of the things we can do different and better in collaboration with our suppliers.
Thanks, Jeff. Shannon, we're going to shift gears a little bit here. How does CII's advanced work packaging help with early supplier engagement?
Thanks, Michael. I'm going to build off a little bit of what Jeff was alluding to. But early supplier engagement is an integral part to the successful implementation of AWP. As we've heard a few times in the conference about AWP, but AWP is a process that really drives towards saving productivity, schedule assurance, and cost savings as well. And it's more than just the productivity of work packages. AWP goes beyond just producing work packages on a project. And it really drives for that integrated supply chain process involving key stakeholders like Jeff was alluding to early on. AWP starts with establishing your work breakdown structure and incorporating your contracting and execution strategies in that work breakdown structure that provides a logical coding for work packages. So early supplier engagement in that consideration of your coding structure is also a key important aspect of AWP in connecting the information and the data that suppliers will be providing for those work packages. Which leads me to my next point here. AWP provides a means for the project task force to enhance the quality and integrity of the data and information needed for execution, turnover, commissioning, and startup at the package level. But again, the question is, but how? So AWP begins, of course, as I mentioned, during the earliest phases, and starts by providing that framework and a method that incorporates that upstream and downstream execution and contracting strategies. And an effective work breakdown structure with that appropriate package coding connects to your project's baseline for progress and scheduling purposes. So it really empowers the project team throughout every level of the project team to be part of that decision making, because there's more clear visibility on where you're at that project package level relative to your information and data connected to your project baseline, progressing and scheduling. And this matters for two reasons from an early supplier engagement perspective. One, with an effective work package coding in place, a project team can leverage early supplier engagement and define that scope of work for complex equipment packages, for example, with tagging requirements so that the project team can map that material to the parent and child tags that will come from your engineers, but also have input from your suppliers. And this allows for effective setup of your material management systems, your work packaging systems, and your turnover management systems as well. And why does this matter? It matters for the purpose of material tracking, handling, allocation, and staging in accordance to your construction, pre-commissioning, and commissioning priorities in the field. And it also enables progressive completion from a bulk construction execution phase into a systems completion as well. And this enables readiness reviews to increase visibility of material status for all materials, like I mentioned before, to enable better decision making and optimize planning efforts in accordance with material constraints throughout the life cycle of the project. And the last point here, I wanted to talk about the continuous improvement aspect of early supplier engagement through the eyes of AWP. So with the AWP process, projects and corporations can realize continuous improvement in the project solutions that they provide through intentional AWP efforts to produce quality and complete work packages in a time and sequence that is optimal for the project execution. The need for early supplier engagement becomes apparent and visible, as I mentioned before, at all levels of the task force. When you are able to understand the scope of work in a work package through the eyes of the supplier, kind of what Jeff was alluding to earlier, and the lines of communication between all parties is open. I think that's a little bit a nod towards collective contracting. Work packages from the from the inception of it to the issuance of the work package, the information and data that needs to be provided in that package for the end user becomes more clear to all parties involved. But beyond that, we often see how this also helps suppliers identify the best products to supply, as Jeff was alluding to, and identify opportunities for future innovation or sustainable solutions, and improvements to standard details and improvements to internal processes, both on the supplier side and the contractor side as well.
Perfect. Thank you, Shannon. So, early supplier engagement sounds, based on the survey, a lot of you are involved in it. But to take that first step, it required some innovative thought. And with that, we're going to ask Keith to talk about how early supplier engagement drives innovation and the culture on a project.
Thank you, Michael. So I think I'd like to start out and just start to discuss about why an innovative culture so important on our projects? And I think when we think about innovation, we like to think about the flashy application or the new thing or robotics application that we have on site. And I would challenge you to say that innovation is really kind of what Shannon was talking about. It's really about continuous improvement. It could be a new methodology, it could be a new tool, it could be a new process that we're looking for that can improve how we're doing things on site. And if an application works for that, that's fantastic. If there's a robotic application that works for that, that's also fantastic. But delivering an innovative culture and captivating our employees is extremely important to helping people understand that they matter, helping people engage on projects. It improves our morale, and it improves our overall relationships on our projects with our customers, with our suppliers throughout the entire food chain. And I really believe that all of us in the room, you know, we mentioned that there was such a huge percentage of people that are doing early supplier engagement, and I would definitely say that all of you that are doing that are innovators. I think the thing that concerned me about that same bar chart was that there was a significant percentage of people that didn't know if they were doing early supplier engagement. So at our level, as premier project delivery personnel, if we don't know if we're doing early supplier engagement and we're not promoting these types of innovative activities, do we think that the people at the lowest levels of our company on the projects that are in the dirt, in the field, with their boots on every single day, do they understand some of the significant challenges that we're seeing in the industry? I know we talked about the supplier disruption, and I found it interesting that there was not one single person that said they weren't having any issues. So that, you know, that says to me that we're all experiencing a significant amount of supplier disruption, which has been unknown to us. I think that that was mentioned yesterday. We've always been able to go down the street and get whatever we want. We've always been able to say, hey, we can plan this in, and we're having to adjust that, and that's something that we haven't done before. There's some other significant challenges in the industry, like the labor shortage, which has been building for years and has basically arrived. Other things like inflation that we haven't seen in a lot of our adult lives. And then as we talk a little bit more about sustainability, we've got a new challenge ahead of ourselves in the global climate change crisis. And we've got to start thinking about things in different ways. Our value propositions are going to shift here in the next few years. The way that we calculate ROI is going to be extremely important. And for the 300 of us or so that's at this conference, I think that the majority of us understand these issues. But is that communication permeating throughout our organization? Is that communication permeating throughout our industry? And I would challenge us to say that we need to go back and we need to engage our personnel and help them understand how we are going to have to start thinking about things differently. We're going to have to start thinking about different solutions in the field that are going to promote us doing things in a way that simplifies our jobs, in a way that gives us more visibility. It gives us better decision-making opportunities. And so I'd like to talk about a couple things that I see on job sites throughout the industry that are inhibitors to us implementing an innovative culture. Now, I've got to start out with a disclaimer. To the chagrin, of my mother, I'm not a PhD. I have no qualifications to diagnose psychological or behavioral issues, but I'm an innovation manager, and so I've got that credit. The first thing that I'd like to talk about is a condition called rose-colored safety glasses. And you might see this throughout any part of the project, but most of the time it's in the proposal phase or right after you're on a high after a win. And some of the symptoms of this are optimism bias. People might be a little bit misinformed or misinterpret some information that was given to them. And they have a knack for inactivity. And you might hear some things come out of their mouths that are something like, well, I bid the last job like this, and the project worked out fine, and so we're just going to go ahead and go with it. And I would challenge that person to say, and we actually saw it twice on here. I think two people said pray for the supply chain. You can't be inactive. There is a cost for doing nothing. And I think that as we look at new ways of working, as we look at new ways of doing things, we have to be proactive in these activities. The second condition is much more prevalent in our industry, and I would say that pretty much every single person in this room has probably had, at one or two times in their career, I know I have, come down with a severe case of tunnel vision. And tunnel vision is a condition you might see throughout the job site, throughout the EPC cycle. Some of the symptoms are working with your head down, selective hearing, selective interpretation of information, and the inability to consider options other than what they've used on previous projects just because of experience. And I think that having the previous experience on jobs is great. We all have that. But as technology grows and as technology permeates through the industry, we've seen such a huge growth in that space in the last few years. There's going to be opportunities for us to continue to improve, for us to do things better, to do things differently, and our employees want the opportunity to go and do that. And we need to be able to cultivate that environment on all of our projects and promote people that think differently and think outside the box. So if you take a look at these two conditions, I would say that early supplier engagement is, keeping with the medical relevancy here, is a treatment for that. I would say that if we can establish an innovative culture at the very beginning of our job, and we can bring in outside opinions and outside information and outside technology from companies who are the experts, the SMEs in some of these fields, and inform our employees about what's going on in the supply chain, what's the current status of what our material availability is. If there's things that we were planning on using that we used on the last job, are they available? If they're not, what are some other opportunities? Are we still using the latest way of installing commodities in the best fashion? And I would say that our suppliers give us the ability to see new technology and see things that they've worked on and see, and our suppliers have a more industry broad, vision and visibility into what's important and how things can be improved. And then how can our company and how could your company leverage those types of technologies? And lastly, I think it's very important that even if you engage in early supplier collaboration and early supplier engagement, it's not enough to just do it at the beginning. It has to be a continual relationship. And as issues come up or as things change or priorities change, you can have those significantly important partnerships to be able to solve problems quickly and move on with your projects and reduce disruption. So I really appreciate the time. Thank you, Michael, for the question.
Thanks, Keith. Just a point, when suppliers are involved early, they understand the scope early, they understand the issues early. So when the problems come up, they're much better able to help you because you've got the relationships, they understand what your issues are. And so, again, as I talked about, they can bring their competencies to the table when the issues do come up. So Ash, how can early engagement with suppliers help deliver more sustainability in our projects?
Michael, I want to ask one thing, right? Sustainability is the trend, and as Keith said, yes, it's a challenge now that we are facing, but it's been something that we've been knowing for the last 20, 30 decades, since the last 1990s, right? So when we talk about sustainability, and especially for your own project delivery, it's important that we understand what is sustainability for our built environment. Sustainability means a lot of stuff, right? It's electrification of construction, it's the designing for sustainability, it's the innovation, it's the work packages. So there are so many levers that we can make and deliver our projects more sustainably by even using new materials, which actually we have talked about, or you have voted about, using new materials, new suppliers to mitigate the risk. And why? The second part is, now that we understood what is sustainability for our projects, early supplier engagement is something that you can very much leverage to accelerate, but also enable yourself to achieve sustainability goals. Because whether we are supplier, whether we are EPCs or owners, we are now all having the goals that we want to achieve, right, for sustainability. Because, sorry, but we are the last generation to make something happen, and we can be either heroes or we can be the biggest villain of the century. So by working with our suppliers very at the early stage, let us ditch the old thinking of just supplier relationship, but now let's become a business partner. Because working with a business partner is about understanding ourselves, understanding our needs, but also understanding our industry much better. So working with your suppliers will also help you to standardize the way we are working. Today, many reasons that we see why sustainability is not happening on the job sites, on the project sites, because there are no standards. And if we all work together and sit at the table together, owner, EPC, supplier, this is how we can make sustainability a reality. And second piece is reducing the negative impacts. It's either the environmental impact. We talked a lot about this climate change is the reality. There will be the supply chain disruption as we talk, and you have also voted. And these supply chain disruptions will happen more and more in the future. And social risk, if you engage your suppliers early, you're actually mitigating the risk of the user health and safety risks there, or the risk that can be happening at the end of that project once you deliver that asset for your project. And there are also very increased opportunities that you can see, and it is about project profitability. I always say sustainability sounds expensive, but it's actually not always the case. It can be a reason why you are actually delivering more profitably your business, your project. You increase the health and safety of the workers that you have on the project site, but as well as the resource efficiency. You can reduce the material need. You can reduce the energy consumption, as well as you can reduce the time and labor needs. We talked a lot, and we heard yesterday that there is a talent scarcity that is coming. We are not able to find the skilled laborers. And this is especially when we talk about resource efficiency, it's not only the hardware, hardware efficiency, but also the social capital efficiency that we can be talking about. And I have brought an example. We have done in Europe a pharma project, and there we started working and talking from an very early stage before it was just an idea of this pharma plant. And what we have found together, because we designed for sustainability from the design phase, we became a partner throughout the whole project cycle, designing for sustainability, constructing for sustainability, maintaining, but also collecting the data for sustainability. Because Shannon said, AVP really about working together and collecting data. And believe me, data is the new oil, and we cannot make sustainability happen without understanding what is the data behind. And it's about really calculating every step and taking the conscious decision to make things better and build a better future. And in this example of project, it was the material savings, it was the installation time saving, it was the engineering effort saving. But at the end, we have shown actually it can be very sustainable. Around 42% of CO2 emission has been reduced. And last but not least, it was 30% less cost for the owner. What does it mean? It's profitable. Sustainability does not mean expensive, but sustainability can also help your organizations to also build that brand image that you need to do to attract the talent, to attract the next management level of the millennials. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Ash. So I think you've heard early supplier engagement is a powerful tool to help you make your project successful. A number of you are using it, you're engaged in it. Some of you are sitting on the sidelines. Hopefully this gets you off the sidelines. While you're sitting there, hopefully you listen to Noy, who's going to come up here in a second, and he's going to take your questions. We have time if you still have a question to get your questions in. Noy will take those questions, and he'll ask the panel those questions. And thank you. Noy?
Thank you, Mike. Thank you for the panel. Great conversation. And in my mind, it's been great to hear what can be done, the potential, and why we need to do more of this. These questions are coming, and there are many of them, about how to do it. And I will start with the first, which I think is fundamental. What are the barriers that owners or owner organizations are preventing that prevents them in early supplier engagement?
Paul, you want to try that?
Sure. Well, what type of owner, I think, is the first thing that you have to talk about. You can have private owners, you can have public-private partnerships, or or public owners. So if you're a public owner, if you're a city or a state or a county or any form of government, there are strict rules about how you interact with suppliers. Everything has to be competitively procured, so you can't be seen as showing any form of favoritism. It's very difficult to navigate all of that in a private organization. Perhaps it's a little bit easier. You can deal with owner preference, but in a public organization, certainly their charters prevent a lot of it. What we had to do, for instance, was not just engage with the vertical turbine pump vendor that we ended up with. We engaged with all of them. So we went to the market and found basically everybody who could prospectively supply the type of pumps that we need. We have some pumps that are 4,500 horsepower. Those are pretty big. They would barely fit in this room. That's the part above the deck, 30 foot down to get to the impeller on top of that. So we engaged with everybody. And there was a fairness. They all understood that they had just as the same opportunity to be successful as anybody else.
Paul, and how was that done? If you can give us an example of what does the engagement look like? Did you reach out in RFI type of?
Well, so we don't just send out an RFP or an inquiry. We go find the people. So this is a thing that we do, which maybe not everybody does. But I go to the market. I go hunting people. Maybe hunting's not the right word, but I go finding the people that can actually do this, and we go to see them. We don't wait for suppliers and vendor reps and whatnot to find us. We go find them.
Okay.
So with our centrifuges, there were half a dozen people that could supply the type of centrifuge we need. There were probably 6 or 8 major pump vendors. We go to find them and bring them in. Anyway.
I would just add quickly, when we looked in the survey and we saw most people are saying this is going to be going on for a while. And so that would be the time for, if you're an owner, to engage with your contracting team. Does your contract allow for you to purchase material in advance? Okay. Does it allow your contractor, when they're still doing their mobilization and their pre-construction, to be able to let out contracts? As Paul alluded to, sometimes it's not allowed. Even though it's the best thing to do and we recognize that it's the best practice, the contracting mechanisms don't allow it. If we're going to be going for another year, 2 years, or beyond, now is the time to make the structural changes within the contracting organization to allow for early procurement and early engagement.
Well, that's a good segue into the next question that we got here. How do you protect ideas or intellectual property when I have not been contracted by the project? And how do you deal with intellectual property and still foster collaborative innovation between suppliers and EPCs?
Maybe we'll get Keith to start, and then Jeff, for you to jump in.
Yeah, so protecting ideas is important to all of us. It's definitely part of or a risk involved when we do sort of any type of collaboration. The easy answer is obviously an NDA, but that doesn't always give you the comfort level that you need. I would say in terms of as these projects progress and the loss of ideas or the loss of technical competencies is critical, right? So I think to me it's all about setting the tone, establishing what the expectations are, establishing the fact that there could be multiple options, and taking a look at multiple suppliers is critical. And I think that as we go down this path, we're going to continue to learn how to do this better, how to engage better, how to be upfront and honest about the options that are being considered. And if we do that, I think that everybody comes away a winner, and we continue to advance the industry.
Yeah. Jeff?
Yeah, just to add, it's common that we use an inquiry cycle to figure out what we want to buy. So as long as we admit that to ourselves, that's a really common thing that we all do. If we only could do some pre-work to understand the available technical options that all our suppliers really want to inform us about, how better then to use the inquiry cycle for what it's meant to do, which is scope out price and delivery. Because it's a point I failed to make earlier. supply chain, the suppliers and contractors own your project schedule and they own your project budget. It's another thing we need to admit to ourselves. They're also the expert in what we're about to buy. We're not.
Yeah.
They are. Many of you are. So if we could get ahead of those things in the design phase, early discussions with clients, how much better off it'll be to have an easy, solid, sort of concrete procurement process to get to the financials.
Thank you, guys. And back over to you, Noe.
So yeah, I think this question is also, the first one also here in that type of topic is, how do you convince clients then who have long preferred lump sum to approach IPD, Integrated Project Delivery? Early engagement usually requires bids on unit rates and a T&M approach until the design matures, but client procurement teams struggle with this.
Yeah, so I'm going to take that one, and I'm going to tell you all we're out of time. We get these big red circles up here. That is a question that we're going to save for the collaborative contracting session at 11 o'clock or 11:15 this morning. And so that's a perfect segue to allow the...
To come back?
Come back.
For more?
That's right.
Anything else you want to share?
No, but the survey is going to be appended to the a PowerPoint that's in your app right now. So we're going to find a way to work with staff here to get that updated, so to be able to get both the presentation and the survey results from the app sometime this morning. Thank you all.
Thank you so much.